Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now a three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! Oh, he hit it! Ja Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. On today's episode, in just a few minutes, I'm going to have on Adam Pike. Adam is also known as GrizzliesFilm on social media. He's going to discuss the Grizzlies preseason from an X's and O's perspective, and he's going to talk about what he's seeing so far from this new look Grizzlies offense. Before we get there, there is Grizzlies news to go over. The team made some roster moves. They gave Scotty Pippen Jr. a standard contract, adding a 14th main roster player. And also, by the way, they freed up Scotty's two-way spot for another player. Also, there unfortunately is some injury news to hit. So before we get into all of that, just one final invitation for you to come play in my negative fantasy basketball league. I set a goal of having 40 players. Right now I have 39. The league is uncapped, so as many people who want to sign up can sign up. We might end up drafting every single player in the NBA. But if you want to do that, play in a negative fantasy league that's a ton of fun. It is only available to my Patreon supporters at patreon.com/fastbreak. Breakfast. By the way, thanks to Zach Patrick, Jason Ferris, Mitch M, and username Zzz for signing up in the last week or two. Appreciate the support. So if you want to play negative fantasy and you want to also get access to my Grizzlies Slack channel, it is basically like Twitter without the riffraff. All of that is available to you at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. And the deadline to sign up for the negative fantasy league is Saturday night because the draft is this Sunday, October 20th. So sign up, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Okay, the Grizzlies signed Scotty Pippen Jr. to a standard contract. Congratulations, Scotty Pippen Jr. on making the main roster. The Grizzlies now have 14 players on standard contracts. They are just about $4 million away from the luxury tax line, perhaps a little bit less. The deal for Scotty is for 4 seasons. The first 2 years are fully guaranteed. There's a partial guarantee on the 3rd year and then a team option on the 4th year. This is a very similar contract structure to the contracts that Vince Williams Jr. and Gigi Jackson signed. It's also quite similar to the contract structure that Kennedy Chandler and Kenneth Lofton Jr. signed. So hopefully Scotty will be here the whole time. Hopefully he keeps improving, becomes a very useful player on a very cheap contract. Because of this deal, the Grizzlies now have 3 contributors signed for at least the next 2 seasons that are extremely cheap, some of the lowest salaries in the entire league. Those contributors are Vince Williams Jr., Gigi Jackson, and Scotty. Now, the contribution levels of those 3, I think, are very different. I like this deal for the Grizzlies, but I wouldn't go as far to call this a home run deal for the Grizzlies the same way that I think the Vince Williams Jr. and the Gigi Jackson contracts are home runs. I think this deal for the Grizzlies right now is basically like a fair contract. Maybe Scotty Pippen Jr. outplays this contract, but right now, I think he's a fringe backup point guard. He might be similar to like a Jordan McLaughlin. Like, is he better than Monte Morris? No, I don't think so. But hopefully he will be because he's very, very young. So it doesn't fit the same category of contract for me as far as the value when you think about Vince Williams Jr. and Gigi Jackson. I think both those guys, absolute bargain steals on their deals. Scotty Pippen Jr.'s deal, while it helps the Grizzlies stay out of the luxury tax, that's not my goal. My goal is to get winning basketball. My goal is to get a championship caliber team. I think right now, Scotty is just more of a deeper depth piece for a playoff team in the NBA. But of course, he's still, again, very young, and he's been very promising. And it gives the Grizzlies a little bit more assurance with their guard rotation, with Ja Morant being, let's call it, injury prone, with Marcus Smart also being injury prone, with Luke Kennard, who, by the way, is hurt right now, being injury prone. It seems useful to have a player like Scotty, who you don't worry about, who can step in and play basically every night if needed. So the Grizzlies get their guy. Scotty earns that contract based on his good play last year in the regular season, based on a very strong summer league, and now what he's done in training camp and through preseason was enough where they felt comfortable about giving him that contract. So the Grizzlies now have one open roster spot on the main roster. It doesn't seem like they're going to fill it. It looks like a lot of teams are leaving that 15th roster spot open. That might be a result of the new CBA. But they do have a open two-way spot, and I don't know what they're going to do with that. I think the most obvious thing would be to bring up Malginha Pereira, put him on a two-way. Also, Yuki Kawamura, I think in fans' minds, should be an option for that. I don't think it really makes sense to add another point guard, especially another very small point guard on a two-way spot. If they don't go ahead and give this two-way spot to Malginha Pereira, my guess would be that they wait at least until training camp is over to see who gets cut, who gets waived from other teams, which players shake free. Maybe they wait and see what further injury issues pop up on the Grizzlies, and they see where they have an area of need. I mean, right now on the two-way spot, you got Jay Huff and you got Cam Spencer. Cam Spencer has the sprained ankle, hasn't played in preseason yet, but the Grizzlies now can at least be shopping for another guy that hopefully can become another development story, much like the successful two-way contracts and promotions of Gigi and Vince, and now Scotty went. Also think about John Conchar, the way that went. Maybe they can find another two-way guy to develop into a main roster spot. And with Scotty Pippen Jr. getting that standard contract, not only does it free up a two-way spot, but it also allows them to add more Exhibit 10 guys. They were operating with only 20 guys in training camp, which is one fewer than the maximum allowed. They were only allowed to have those 20 guys because they only had 13 players on standard contracts. Once they added Scotty Pippen Jr. to the main roster with 14 standard contracts, you can now add that 21st player for training camp. And they went ahead and signed David Johnson, who played on the Hustle last year. They subsequently waived David Johnson to cycle him out to bring in another player, Miles Norris. Currently, they're stacking the Memphis Hustle squad by bringing in guys on Exhibit 10 deals, giving them a little financial boost, getting their G League rights. That's what's happening there. I don't know if we'll see Miles play in the game on Friday against the Heat. Possibly he gets waived for somebody else before that game happens. Finally, before we get to Adam, the injury news about Luke Kennard. Taylor Jenkins told reporters at Grizzlies practice that Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. are right now on pace to be available on opening night, but that Luke Kennard is experiencing foot soreness and, quote, there's a chance he might miss a little time. This is very bad news for the Grizzlies, who are still extremely shorthanded. I do not think you can call this bad injury luck here. Luke Kennard is a player who misses games, much like Derrick Rose last year, much like Marcus Smart. You know when you sign Luke Kennard, you know when you make it your entire offseason transaction goals to keep Luke Kennard, that you are signing a guy who is not known for his availability. So if Luke is out opening night, now that frees up more playing time possibly for Scotty Pippen Jr. or Jalen Wells or Jake LaRavia. Like your 10-man rotation, it's going to be Ja, Desmond, Marcus, Jaren, and Zach. Hopefully they're all available. And then off the bench, you got Santi and Brandon, and then 3 of the following 4 players, I think, would fill out your 10-man rotation. Those 4 players would be Scotty Pippen Jr., John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, or Jalen Wells. So we don't know if Luke's going to miss opening night. It's still a week away, but not that promising when Taylor Jenkins says they're waiting on the results of an examination and he could miss a little time. By the way, for that opening night, which is October 23rd, Wednesday, October 23rd, the Grizzlies play a road game at the Utah Jazz. If you're in the Nashville area, I will be hosting a Grizzlies watch party at Noble's Kitchen and Beer Hall. It's the same spot we've had the watch parties the last at least 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons. Coming out to Noble's Beer Hall, I will be giving away Grizzlies prizes. Come hang out with fellow Grizzlies fans and watching this new look Grizzlies team with a new look offense take on the Utah Jazz and kick off the 2024-2025 season. Again, 8 p.m. at Noble's Beer Hall in Nashville. And now, let's take a quick break. And on the other side of the break, we will have Adam Pike to talk about the Grizzlies' new offense. I'm joined right now by Adam Pike, otherwise known as GrizzliesFilm on social media. You may know him that way. But Adam, welcome to Grits and Grinds. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. First time, long time.
Yeah, great. Yeah, happy to have you on. I know you're a listener. I know you a little bit based on social media. Also, you're a Patreon supporter, so I've gotten to know you that way over in our Grizzlies Slack channel. Adam, you are a Canadian Grizzlies fan, yet not an angered Vancouver Grizzlies fan. Is that an accurate assessment?
Accurate. I didn't grow up in Vancouver, so I don't particularly care.
Okay, there we go. Sometimes you run across the Canadian Grizzlies fans who still hold a grudge. And I don't have anything comforting to say to those people. Like, yeah, that stinks. I'd be very angry if I lost my team
lots
too.
of them on Twitter. Follow lots of them on Twitter.
So we actually met in person at Las Vegas Summer League. And I was asking you basically how you got into like doing all this and tracking all this. And you were saying, this blew my mind, so I want you to blow the listeners' minds. You like manually track every single Grizzlies game and log every single play. And this is an unbelievably time-intensive process. Why do you do this?
Why do I do this? I don't have the great answer. A lot of fans were talking about like, you know, they don't like Jenkins' offense or he doesn't run anything on offense.
Yeah.
And I was like, this clearly isn't true. You see the plays. His playbook is gigantic compared to the NBA. So what I wanted to do was kind of put that together and show people that no, he does run offense. He's not just doing ISOs.
Yeah. It's not call 12. I thought we ran call 12.
There is a lot of call 12, last couple minutes of the game, but that's every team in the NBA.
Yeah. So you are, I would say, I mean, if you're not an X's and O's expert, at the very least, you know way more about the X's and O's than I do. And so that's why I want to have you on. I want you to help me understand what I'm seeing. Before we get into what's going on in the preseason so far and how the offense is different, I actually want to throw you a question I didn't prep you for, because you just mentioned the fact that you kind of got into it. You're like, people are criticizing Jenkins. You're like, no, he runs a lot of stuff. How do you think, Adam, Taylor Jenkins stacks up league wide as far as an NBA coach? I know you're not logging every other NBA team, but like I've given Jenkins criticism. My criticisms are always bold. Like, hey, why didn't you play DeAnthony Melton more? Or why didn't these lineups play in the playoffs? And also I think a fair criticism of the Grizzlies so far is they have underwhelmed in the postseason. Their regular season success has been very good under Taylor Jenkins. But how do you think right now Taylor Jenkins, as one of the most tenured coaches in the NBA, how do you think he stacks up league-wide as a coach?
Yeah, he's the longest tenured coach without a championship and only one playoff series win. I think he's probably somewhere around like 10 to 15. You know, ranking coaches is very, very hard, and there's probably only a few people who can do it accurately. And I'm probably not one of them.
Yep. That's fair. So he's above average.
Yeah, he's not top 5, he's not bottom 5, but so like you watch Chauncey Billups and it's like, or you watch someone like Eric Spoelstra and you're like, no, he affects the game. I think Jenkins, somewhere in the top 10 to top 15.
Sounds good. All right. So there's been a lot of discussion about the Grizzlies overhauling their offense. Of course, they changed over basically their entire coaching staff, assistant coaching staff. And what have you seen so far in preseason? I feel like, much like people are saying, hey, Jenkins doesn't run anything, I also feel like in the very first game, people are like, oh, this new offense is amazing. And I'm like, what are y'all seeing? So Adam, what has been different so far?
Okay, so with the hand tracking, two things that jump out right away. Pick and roll is about halved from where it was last year. So just straight usage of like 5 out pick and roll or 4 out pick and roll. We're down from like they used to run it like a quarter, or sorry, like 25% of the time last year. That's down
Mhm.
to like close to 11%. So pick and roll usage is way down and set usage is way down. That's from about like 42% to 30%. So instead of running it like almost half the time, they're running it like once, like a third every time they're down the floor. So they are removing the plays from the book
So
so far,
with
at least.
so far with this halving of the pick and roll frequency, and of course we only got one jaw game,
Yep.
so it's way too early, I know, to draw any conclusions. And this is one of the things that was actually maybe theorized about with the new coaches, also with Patrick St. Andrews, also with Tomas Isola, was like, all right, they maybe veer away from pick and rolls. But has the not running pick and roll offense, do you think it's been successful? Does that feel like a good change?
I do like how it looks so far. I wouldn't call it that successful. Lots of turnovers,
Yeah.
lots of wrong players taking 3-point attempts, in my opinion, probably.
That's a Grizzly special. So, all
Grizzly
right. So,
special.
so right now the pick and rolls have been cut in half. What else is different? Would you say?
Yeah, so they're the top team in the league in points scored off cuts. There was a tweet I posted the other day against the Mavericks. They scored 27 points off cuts, which would be the most in any Jenkins game in his entire career. And
Hmm.
right now the average is about 10 points, or no, sorry, it's about like 17 points off cuts per game,
Mm-hmm.
which is double the season average of any Jenkins season.
So through four preseason games, if I
Through
understood
four
you,
preseason games,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So the Grizzlies right now averaging 17 points per game off of cuts, and that is the one thing where ignorant me watching the games is like, hey, we're doing a lot of backdoor cuts, and we're getting a lot of layups off of these backdoor cuts. So that frequency has increased. I think it seems like so the read and react is the term I keep using. It seems like maybe there are these set things where like when the ball handler dribbles towards the corner, if you're in that corner, you're just going to cut back door. And we're doing this a lot. I feel like Conchar has really gotten it good. Also, Yuki Kawamura understands to hit the cutters and even leading cutters into those backdoor cuts. One of my questions is this right now? It feels like this could be more of a regular season trick. Like this seems like something that could be effective in the regular season when you're playing back to back, so the team hasn't scouted for you. Do you think this cutting offense, and maybe I'm jumping to the end of the show, but like the whole point of overhauling the offense is for playoff half court success. Do you think this cutting thing is going to be an added benefit and actually work in the postseason?
Yes, that's one of the points that I was gonna bring up when it came to backdoor cutting.
Yeah.
So like when teams aren't gonna prepare against the Grizzlies every game, I think it's gonna be a lot easier to score points off backdoor cuts. But in the playoffs, I'm sure like the opposing head coaches are gonna be tracking like either in practice or each game after they're gonna say like, here's where he missed it on this possession, and it's gonna be a lot easier to defend in the playoffs. I'm also curious. This is just me speculating, but how it looks against a zone defense. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work yet. We've seen
Yeah. Yeah.
Mavs and Pacers
It's a
use a
great
little bit
point.
of zone. Yeah. We've seen Mavs and Pacers use a little bit of zone, but if that's just a blanket coverage that they're going to use, I'm not sure how it's going to look against that.
Yeah, I have nightmares still of regular season games when Eric Spoelstra and the Miami Heat are like, "Hey, let's practice our zone on the Grizzlies for a quarter," and the Grizzlies can't score. It's like
Yep.
they just can't score. And then Eric Spoelstra, thankfully, is usually like, "Hey, we're not going to waste any more zone on the Grizzlies, a team not in our conference. Let's go back to playing man. Let's give the Grizzlies a chance in this regular season game." Um, so lots of backdoor cuts. That's the thing a lot of us are seeing. The pick and rolls have been reduced. Is there anything else that is maybe a demonstration of how things are being overhauled, or are those just like the main points so far?
Yeah, so the read and react is definitely the main thing. Like you said, it's going to be maybe the player at the top of the key is going to dribble towards the corner, and either the player on the wing will backdoor cut, and the player in the corner will do like a burst cut, it's called, where he's going to come one pass away instead of being two passes away. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
smaller gap. So that's another big point of the offense is getting players closer together so the passes are easier.
One thing I'm seeing that maybe you can tell me if I'm right or not, because the question I had when they said, "Hey, no one's going to be standing still in offense. It's a motion offense." And I was like, well, NBA offenses are all about just standing in the corners. You want to have that shooter there as an outlet. One thing I am seeing, it seems like maybe when someone dribbles into the lane, when the ball handler has the ball and beats this guy into the lane, the person in the corner a lot of times is not staying in the corner. They're kind of running towards, I guess, the above the break, kind of the hash mark, and then looping into the paint. And then if the guy's in the dunker spot, that guy is retreating into the corner. Am I seeing this right? Does that have a name? Is this a specific thing they're doing?
I don't know if it has a specific name. I learned about it from Noah LaRoche,
Oh, okay.
who's on the development side of the team. But basically, it's if the driver's going to drive right, everyone's going to cut right, everyone's going to move right, and occupy the spot. So, like the player who is closest to the driver, he's going to fill behind him by cutting towards him. So if the driver's starting from the top of the key, the player from the wing is going to go and fill behind. And then it's going to send everyone in kind of like a circular motion or a rotation to keep the shell of the offense. So the shell being the four different off-ball positions, and they're just going to keep that the whole possession is the key.
So one of the things that I saw at training camp, you don't get to see much when you cover training camp because it's closed practices. And then they let you in at the very end, basically, for media availability. And you can watch them shooting some. But one of the things I did see, and I think this is how they taught the offense to people, when individual players were working on some three-pointers or just shooting moves. So I saw Desmond Bane doing several dribbles where he would just take it on the wing, dribble towards the center of the court, and pull up for a three-pointer. While he was doing that, some of like the Exhibit 10 guys were under the basket moving in concert with him. You could see they were down kind of on the dunker spot, down on the block. And then as Desmond Bane dribbled towards the middle of the court to the top of the key, they would slide out. So I was watching being like, hey, this is the much more advanced version of me coaching kids soccer and telling my kids to like, hey, when this person dribbles over here, you want to maintain this 45 or 90 degree angle. You want to be over here to the wing, like always be moving to an open spot. So I saw some of that, like the concert, the way it's supposed to work with the guys rotating. Now, also,
and without defenders?
This was without defenders. It was just nobody was on the court. I think it just was the way I interpret it was just getting used to the fact, hey, when Desmond Bane is dribbling over here, you're not watching. You're going to move over. You're going to fill in the space that gets vacated.
Yeah. Okay, I'll touch on that really quickly.
Yeah.
So with LaRoche, Joe Boylan, and Carpenter, those are three of the main development guys that they signed. And they all go back in the past. And one thing they all have in common is something called constraint-led approach. And I'm not going to get all coach pilled, but basically it's like a type of teaching practice where you're doing small side games. So something like that, or something could be like, it's 3-on-3. You can only score with layups or three-pointers, or you can only score off cuts, or it'll be 3-on-2, and then another defender comes in after 3 seconds. So like it's like about empowering the players and decision making. So it's really cool that we see that in practice, because obviously I don't see any practice.
So another way that I'm seeing these cuts from the corner, where the player from the corner then moves towards the top of the key before veering into the paint. We're seeing out offensive rebounding, and we're seeing it specifically with Zach Edey because he's huge. We're all staring at Zach Edey. We want to see what he's doing. And there's times we're like, hey, Zach Edey's in the corner. That's interesting. And then he is swinging towards the basket. And then I saw you posted on social media a bunch of stuff about offensive rebounding and the way they are crashing the glass. Can you speak to that and maybe what looks like an increased focus on attacking the glass?
Yeah, this is something I posted at 1 a.m. my time last night. And I reposted it this morning. But so the idea is anytime there's a three-point shot, the other four players are going to crash the glass, and it's called tagging the rebound. Now, Isolo didn't invent this, but he did use it in Germany and he used it in Paris. And he had a small team. He had like Shorts was the main point guard, and he was 5'8", so same height as Yuki. But the idea is the four players are going to crash. They're going to make contact with the player who's supposed to be boxing them out. So then it turns into like a 50-50 rebounding opportunity on the offensive side. And it also is designed to like stop transition offense. Because if you're taking your player and taking all their space away, they're not able to just grab the ball and run down the court. So how it affects the efficiency, I'm not sure, because the players in the NBA are a lot more athletic. Like,
yeah,
if player X is tagging up LeBron or like someone on the Pacers like Halliburton, who's a really good transition player. I'm not sure how it's going to look there, but so it's kind of twofold. It's get offensive rebounds and it stop the transition defense at the same time is the philosophy behind it.
So I feel like offensive rebounding kind of goes in and out of style or fashion in the NBA, where some teams aren't doing it that much. I personally, uh, I like it, especially with the Grizzlies probably not being an accurate 3-point shooting team. And one of my understandings, this could be incorrect, one of my just very simple understandings of the whole concept of 3-point shooting and analytics. Yes, we know a 3-point shot is worth more than a 2-point shot usually, but also jumpers have a higher probability a lot of times of just getting long rebounds. And so one of my specific frustrations in previous seasons was we're launching 3-pointers and also not trying to rebound them. So we're losing one of these advantages. So I at least like this concept. Whether or not, again, the big question is, does any of this change our postseason outcomes? I'd like to actually, I could have said this earlier, as a little reminder for everyone, the Grizzlies in 2022 had the 4th best offensive rating in the NBA, and they were 3rd in pace that year. In 2023, they were actually 4th in pace that season. The offense much lower, was 14th in overall offense, but we've already seen the pace. And that's another thing we keep pointing to. Hey, this new offense, they're playing with a lot of pace. It's like they've always played with a lot of pace since Ja Morant got here. So the question is going to be, is this idea of crashing the glass and creating extra possessions that way, is this a regular season trick or is it a postseason trick? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, I think it's something that you can kind of plan for more in the playoffs. Like that's going to be the answer for everything, basically.
Yeah.
But no, if this has been the philosophy on every 3-point attempt so far, so with the caveat that it's still preseason, this looks like that's what they're going to use. But also, like, no, I don't think any other team in the NBA uses this. This is like an international trick, I guess. So, at least as far as my understanding of it. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that translates.
So when you say it's an international trick, are you talking specifically about this concept of tagging where you're not necessarily running in and saying, I'm crashing the glass to get the rebound. You're saying, I'm running in to put a body on somebody to get the rebound. Is that the difference?
Yeah, the player who's boxing you out, you're supposed to tag them up. So you're supposed to the goal is to take away all the space between you and the person tagging you up. But it's also like they're sending 4 players. So like if you're trying to get back in the game, maybe you'll send 4 players to go get the rebound.
Mm-hmm.
But Grizzlies have done it on every 3-point attempt so far. So it's like there's a clear distinction between the two, in my mind at least.
Gotcha. That's very interesting. Let's talk about Zach Edey. Of course, that's the biggest storyline for the Grizzlies, probably this preseason. We're all very excited, especially about his last 2 games. He was unbelievable against the Pacers, had a great game against the Bulls. Dean Oliver posted this stat that right now, based on synergy, not only does Zach Edey have the most post-ups in the NBA in the preseason, he's scoring 1.41 points per post-up. So the question is, how do post-ups fit into this new offensive scheme? And is it a break from the offensive scheme / shouldn't we just post up Zach Edey every time? I mean, if we're getting 1.4 points per play, yes is the answer. But how do Zach Edey post ups mesh with this new offensive scheme?
If you're getting 1.4 points per play, you don't need to run any offense.
Yeah.
But so again, it goes back to like the spacing concept. So we'll see sometimes they'll draw timeout plays for Zach Edey post up touches, and the goal is to get the spacing just how they want it. So one of the concepts that we saw the other day was they called a timeout for Zach Edey. They had called the post up for Zach Edey. Jalen Wells cut to the corner. So the goal was to have Jalen Wells 1 pass away. And when Jalen Wells' defender helped off him, John Conchar cut directly into the lane because they don't want the one defender being able to guard 2 players. So that's like it's a little bit of a break in the sense that it's not 5 players all moving around and following each other, but it's the same philosophy of keeping the shape of the offense and creating advantages by having one play if there's a double, then one player is free to do something else.
So do you think that they posted Zach Edey up more in the last 2 preseason games as a like strategy shift, or was it just because hey, lots of players are out, let's actually give the big guy some touches? Or do you think maybe the first two games it was on the players where they were like, Zach Edey's there, give him the ball? Like, what are your thoughts on just the increase in post-up frequency we've seen in the last two preseason games?
I think they're going to be a little bit of an outlier. So if you look at like post-up touches in the NBA, Jokic has about 10 a game and Embiid has like 8 a game. And the next closest is 6 with
Yeah.
Randall. Like there's no way that Zach Edey is going to be getting 8 post-up touches a game, in my opinion, of course.
Why not? Why not
Yeah,
us?
if he's scoring 1.4 points per possession, then for sure. But like Jokic and Embiid score about 1.1 points per possession, which is still very good offense, but they're the two best post-up players in like a generation.
So it sounds like you're saying Zach Edey is comfortably 30% better than Jokic and Embiid. I love it. I say final thought and final question for you, and maybe there's no way to answer this, but when we see, Edey scoring well on the post ups, and then when we think about his screening game, we've seen some of it. Like you posted a clip of him setting the Gortat screen that allowed Laravia to get in the paint and score. One of Yuki Kawamura's threes was off the dribble last game where Edey screened his guy, gave him a wide open 3-pointer. When we think about one of the strengths of Zach Edey, you think about post ups and you also think about his screens. And my question, the big philosophy question, the joke I'm making with a lot of people offline who are Grizzlies fans, where it's like, we're putting in a new offense. Fine. Maybe that's the reason the turnovers are up. Who knows? Maybe it's just preseason, but we're putting in a new offense. What are the odds it's better than just spamming pick and roll Ja Morant, Zach Edey over and over and over? Because part of me thinks like that's pretty fun to try a new offense with back cuts. Oh, we're getting a lot of John Conchar layups. And it's like, guys, we have Ja Morant and Zach Edey. Run pick and roll. Don't make it hard. Just run pick and roll every single time. So what are your thoughts on just the idea of like, is this too galaxy brained, going away from like the meat and potatoes, post up your 7'5" guy and run pick and rolls with your all NBA point guard at the 7'5" guy?
It's very interesting, like the philosophy they went in coaching decisions, and then like the draft pick they used, right? Because Edey and Ja are both min-max players. They're both like they're only going to play one position. They're really only to defend one position. And they're optimal in the same way. So Galaxy brained, maybe. I think we are going to see a lot more pick and roll towards like the middle and the end of the season, and it's always going to be 12 Ja at the end of games. I don't think that's going to change. If you want like 40 pick and rolls a game, then I don't really think this is the offense that's going to happen.
Right.
But there's definitely going to be the moments where it happens.
I mean, that for me is the question. If we talk about points per play, and I don't know what the average, what the average points per play in the NBA game is? I assume it's like
half court, it's about 1 point per play.
Yeah. So you're trying to get 1 point per play. And my thinking is, as just a basketball league pass junkie, it's like, I feel like we can beat 1 point per play just by Ja or Desmond Bane running pick and roll with Zach Edey. At least try it for a lot. Whether or not the back cuts, the extra possessions from the rebounding, also if the defense is forcing turnovers. Actually, have you seen much changes with the defense? I feel like they talked a lot about they were going to pressure up a good bit and try to force the issue. I haven't seen a lot of that picking up full court or anything. I feel like there's been some token like 3/4 pressure, but have you seen any changes? I know that they specifically said, Taylor Jenkins said a lot of the defense is going to stay the same. We're not changing anything there. We're going to use a lot of just like the knowledge from previous seasons that everyone already has to kind of be similar. So are there any changes that you've seen on the defensive end?
There's been like Pippen has taken up a few possessions full court, but they're not using the starters to do that. Marcus Smart doesn't look like he's in shape to do full court. The one thing that was different that he mentioned was Jaren will be switching more. So you're kind of taking Jaren away from what I think is his best trait is rim protection. But obviously Jaren's been out all preseason, so we haven't seen that. And that's one thing that they didn't take from Isolo in Paris, because in Paris he ran a very aggressive like hedge every single ball screen defense, and it created a lot of turnovers. But defense has mostly just been drop coverage. The two bigs is interesting. I feel like Huff doesn't really have the ground coverage to play the same role as Jaren does beside Edey. So I'm not really a big fan of those. But besides, yeah, mostly looks the same.
I'm pretty sure we're not going to see Huff Edey big combinations when the regular season starts. Although who knows with the injury luck we've had so far. Well, Adam, thanks so much. A very illuminating spot by you right here, telling us the things that we're maybe not completely observing. And I really appreciate your analysis. Everybody go check out GrizzliesFilm on Twitter. Anything else you want to plug where people can get your stuff?
No, just Twitter account. That's good. Thanks.
Sounds good. Well, Adam, thanks for coming on. Hopefully we'll get you on again sometime in the future.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me, Keith.